This conference will now be recorded.
Afternoon, we'll call this meeting to order. Thank you very much for your attendance. And I don't see that we've got many people online yet. We'll see. Oh, yeah, we do. We've got about 5 people online. Remind the people that are online. Thank you. Remind the people online that if you have a comment as to when we're talking about a specific issue, you can put it in the chat line. But let's go ahead and get started. If I can ask everybody to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag Thank you. One of our board members just said play ball. I worked in a Catholic hospital one time, and our nun was a chaplain. She led our staff meetings, and she always did this long prayer beforehand. And she said at the end, now finish it the way you normally would, expecting everyone to say amen. The CFO said, play ball. He didn't last very long. Anyway, let's go ahead and get started with the agenda then. So the first thing on the agenda is a call to order and roll call and establish a quorum. Jill, would you do that, please?
Board President Barbara Fugelberg,
I'm here.
Board Vice President Ron Woodward,
Present.
Board Secretary Marilyn Sorensen,
Here.
Board Treasurer Becca Paulson,
Here.
Board of Director Marie Besham,
Here.
Board of Director Steve Deal,
Here.
Board of Director Roberta Ernest, sorry,
Here.
Roberta. Homeowner statement period. Please mute your audio. Please use the chat option for your questions. Questions should be addressed to the concerns of the motion before the board takes formal action on the item under formal discussion on the table. Negative comments directed at the residents, employees of the association, or the board of directors will not be allowed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam President?
Yeah.
I would like to address the, what we call the homeowner statement period. and the changes that established need to be rectified, if I may.
Okay, Glenn?
All right, we all are familiar with the Robert's Rules of Order, and it has come about that we're not progressing in the owner statement accordingly. And let me just cite you a little bit what we're talking about. The number of speeches on the same question for member per day. Merely asking a question or making a brief suggestion is not counted in speaking in a debate. So what I'm going to just make it very shortly, that the Robert's Rules of Order says that a person can speak for 10 minutes twice a day in any given meeting, unless the club states otherwise. And the club has stated otherwise prior, and they put it into the homeowner statement period of a 2-minute limit speech time. Is that correct? We had that in our on the agenda. I don't know if Jill remembers that, but that needs to be put back in there, the 2-minute, because if it's not in there, posted
Thank
as
you.
requested by Robert's Rules, then they give you 10 minutes to speak twice.
Thank
The
you.
other thing that the Robert's Rules basically say is that when a speaker is speaking, that if he asks the board a question and the board takes 2 minutes to answer it, that's not 2 minutes charged to the speaking time. And basically, we want to know that is our timer who does the timing, does he have a pause timer where that when the member is done speaking and asks the questions, he's waiting for answers, that time is not deducted from his 2 minutes. Do they have a pause timer?
Glenn, we haven't felt the need to impose that 2-minute limit, except when there are issues that we know that there are going to be a number of residents responding to, and then we do have a timer for that. But typically, we have not imposed that 2-minute limit.
And you're correct. You have been very lenient in
Yes.
many of the meetings that I've been at. But here it is, if at
We
some
understand.
point in time, a member is going to not combine or comply to the courtesy and the dignity to the board.
Yes.
And at that time, if it's not posted the 2 minutes, it's very difficult to enforce. That's all I'm saying.
Thank you. Is your
Okay.
2 minutes up then?
Thank you.
Thank you, Glenn. And as far as Robert's Rules of Order, we do attempt to stick to it, at least in how we establish our motions, making sure we get a first and a second on it. And, sometimes I forget to do that. And then we have the board comment on it and ask for any questions, and then we open it up to the residents. And then we would actually take the vote after that. That's how about as strict as we stick to Robert's Rules, but understanding that a lot of people have a different opinion. So always appreciate your comments, Glenn. First thing on the agenda is the approval of the meeting minutes. Can I get a motion to that?
I make a motion to approve the minutes from the February 10, 2022 board meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any questions from any of the board members on anything that's in the minutes? Any corrections? See. We'll be making a change to that. So the minutes are corrected as the minutes reflect the conversation that went on at the meeting. Seeing no other questions, any questions, comments from the residents? Seeing none, I don't see anything in the chat either. So, okay. I'm sorry, I just lost the chat. I must have kicked. Okay, all in favor of the minutes from the February 10th, 2022 board meeting, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next thing on the agenda is the financial report for January 2022. Can I get a motion?
I move we approve the January 22 financial statements.
Second.
From any of the members of the board regarding the financial statements for January? Seeing none. Any questions, comments from any residents? Seeing none. And I see nothing in the chat. All in favor of approving the minutes from the January 2022 financial report, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next thing on the agenda are the committee reports. The first thing is the Budget Committee. Bill Powell is the chairperson. So the first thing has to do with committee appointments.
I make a motion to approve William Powell and Robert Stevens as members of the Budget Committee for 2-year appointments.
Second.
Still doing a bit of orientation. Thank you. So we have a first and a second for William Powell and Robert Stevens. Any questions from the board? Seeing none. Any questions from the residents? Bill, do you have any comments about those two people? I don't know if you know that, William Powell or Robert.
He's not very reliable. Anyway, this is an interesting year. We're having 100% board reapproval due to resignation, move away, and a person stolen beyond the board of directors, as well as 2 terms that happen to end up. So we're doing all 5 will be done. That's why there's 1 and 2 year, because next year we'll be spreading them out. We're trying to get separation here. So so that's why we're doing it. So anyways, I've been chairman for a little over a year now, and we'll probably continue that position. Bob comes to us with a lot of business experience, HOA experience, finance experience, and has proven already to be very helpful on the board. So I recommend these 2 approved.
Any other questions, comments from a resident? All in favor of approving William Powell and Robert Stevens to the Budget Committee, all in favor say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Wonderful. Next on the agenda,
I move to approve Kay Egley, Bob Howes, and Blaine Rubish as members of the Budget Committee for 1-year appointments.
I'll second that. Any questions, comments from any member of the board? Okay, any questions, comments from any residents? Bill, do you have any comments?
Yeah, just one thing, the agenda lists Bob How's name wrong. This is Bob Sandy. That's his email address. His wife is Sandy. So it's Bob Howes.
Bob Howell.
Yeah, the agenda says
H-O-W-E-S?
E-S, H-O-W-E-S.
All right.
We have interviewed Kay, obviously. She's been a board member, BGM committee member, many other places, and she just wants to get back into serving the community. So brings a wealth of experience and history to the community, to the board, which we're very happy to get. Blaine comes with some finance experience and running his own company, et cetera. Again, very qualified to bring forth. And Bob has been a member for the last 2 years, closer to 1.5 years. It was a mid-year approval, and also brings a lot. Bob will probably be the vice chairman.
Okay. So we have a motion on the table to approve Kay Egley, Blaine. Roberta, could you give us the Rubush and Bob Howes as a 1-year term of the Budget Committee. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? None. Motion passes. These are all pretty easy. Thank you. Okay. All right. Next thing on the agenda is a motion regarding the partial refund of the Capital Improvement Fund. Can I get a motion to that effect?
Make a motion to correct the amount of the 2022, 2023 capital improvement assessment from 182.45 to 164.18. This will result in a credit to the homeowners' accounts that have already made the payment.
I second the motion.
So we already had the second. Thank you. What happened here was that the budget committee was working on the budget for next year and calculating the amount that would be the amount for the capital improvement assessment. And unbeknownst to us and all the changes that occurred in the CCNRs, of which we looked through over and over and over again, the intent really under section 5 was really just to add language clarifying your monthly assessment being two-parter of a base assessment and the pass-through. So we're trying to add the language of a pass-through. In the course of all the various hands that were involved in the changes in the CCNRs, somewhere along the line, it got a change to the definition of common expenses was included, was always there, but the addition of the pass-through expenses, which is your sewer and stormwater, was included in that, and we missed that. So the calculation now is that under the CCNRs that you approved, was that number would not be included in calculating the capital improvement assessment. And so as a result of that, we need to refund, isn't it $16 and some cents? $18.27. So it was an error on our part, but because it was CCNR changes that probably, I would bet many of you didn't even notice yourself, but an astute member did. And it was a mistake, and we need to correct the mistake and make sure that it's calculated correctly and it benefits you. So that is the intent. Dawn, do you want to explain how that would occur? Dawn is our accountant.
Yes, so I will, I will put a credit on everybody's account. Those who have paid, it will show as a prepayment that technically can be applied to your normal homeowner dues. If the charge of the $182.45 is still on there, it will reduce it by the $18.27. A lot of people are on auto debit, so we will pull those in April, and it will be the correct amount that we pull.
Does that make sense to the residents? Any questions about that? Glenn, are you standing related to this topic? The question on the floor is the refund of the $18.27 to the residents from the capital improvement calculation. Okay.
First of all, the statute or the CCNR's 5.6. If I sent that copy to you, and I think you all should have read it, it basically says that the reserve funds collected cannot, oh, it's got a problem there. You're right. Okay. Is that on my 2 minutes?
No, sir.
Okay. Okay. In the CCNR 5.6, there's a statement made, any reserves collected for the future maintenance or repair of the common area or any portion thereof shall be included and should not be included in determining the foregoing limitation of a CIA capital improvement account assessment. So basically what you are doing, you're taking the annual budget, which was 3 million and change, and then you're using that and you're subtracting the pass-through for the sewer stuff. But actually the budget that it should subtract is the reserve funds, what they're saying. The reserve funds should not be counted in that. So now the budget should be basically what I put out to you as basically $730,158 it was collected or is budgeted because it's 20, the reserve fund is 20% of the budget. So that should be subtracted basically from the annual budget and go from there. Then the sewer is 7% of the annual budget.
The what is?
The sewer.
The sewer.
The sewer is 7% of the annual budget, and that is a pass-through. So that should not be accumulated in. Then you have the common grounds. When I say a common grounds budget or areas, and that's 6% of the original budget. So that should be subtracted from there. Now, I have a copy of what other suggestions that come up. And if you're going to approve just the $18 credit, then you will be in violation of CC&R's 5.6. I have come up with, and if you need a copy, I've got copies for all the members, is basically if you take the 3 million annual budget and subtract the reserve funds from that budget, which is 730,158, then you come down to 2,900,000, and 10% of that equals 292,063 available for assessments, and 2001 lots divided by that number comes with a $45.96.
Okay.
Now, we can go through all these again, but the main thing is in the CC&R's 5.6, in that statement I made,
Understand
that the reserves funds collected must be deducted from the annual budget and do the formula from then.
Thank you. Thank you. Bill, will you speak to
If
that?
I may
and then-
respond to
Yes.
that, the board has in their packet under justification a set of numbers. Those numbers have been verified by myself, the treasurer, Dawn, and the vice chairman of the committee, Ken Cook. The budget number that's being referred to at 3 million, let me get 650. That is the operating budget. There are no reserve numbers included in that number. That's a secondary number off to the side, 0 on that. So that number is wrong. The sewer number is a larger number, and the sewer number is 299,429 plus stormwater of $66,000. So closer to $365,000 from that. There is no line item for common. I've been through the budget line by line. I have it with me. There is no common, so no 6% deduction. The numbers we gave you are the correct numbers verified by 4 responsible people.
And at least one of those person, Ken Cook, well, and I'm sure Dawn too, because Dawn's been here a few years, have been involved in that formula and used the same formula, except for the change to the sewer and stormwater for the last few years. Okay, all right. Becca, do you have any comment?
I'd just like to say that I have verified the numbers that were used for that calculation. I read through the CC&Rs. I'm new, so I had no history to rely on or go back to. Exactly as it is written, that is what was done.
Okay.
So you're saying the calculation you came up with is consistent with the CC&Rs?
Yes, my calculation and Mr. Powell's is the same as indicated or required by the CC&Rs.
Thank you.
Okay,
Glenn,
hello,
so you brought
hello,
up the,
hello. Okay, I agree with that. The couple things that I think we should have done maybe is communicated more with the people about that, how the formula arrived, because obviously the first one was wrong. And
So-
then if you look at the monthly report, the pie shape of the assessments in the budget, it says right there, reserve fund is in that pie shape of 20% of the annual budget. But you're saying differently.
what they're
Okay.
talking about is the actual budget. That pie
Okay.
sheet has to do with that month, on that individual month, how the dollars were allocated. That is not the annual budget. That is just for that specific month of how the dollars were put into what bucket.
Okay, if that would have been explained to myself, because I was inquiring about it, or the membership who had inquired about it, then we wouldn't be up here today. But if that's your decision, thank you very much. I just must have understood what you were getting at.
Thank you.
And I appreciate the fact that you did do the research, and I appreciate the fact that we got it settled. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, it is, we appreciate the fact that the discrepancy came to our attention, but the board and I have discussed it and the budget committee has discussed it and believe that the right thing to do is the right thing to do, and that is to refund that money. So the motion on the table is to, let me back up. Is there any more questions from any residents? See, motion's been made. So the motion on the table is to correct the amount of the 2022-2023 capital improvement assessment from the 182.45 down to 164.18. This will result in a credit to the homeowner's account for that. That's already been the payment that's been made. Since it's affecting a dollar amount, I'll ask for a roll call vote, please.
Steve Deal,
Yes.
Roberta Ernest,
Yes.
Marilyn Sorensen,
Yes.
Marie Besham,
Yes.
Becca Paulson,
Yes.
Ron Woodward,
Yes.
Barbara Fugelberg.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
So what that means is that there's probably about a $36,000 decrease in the amount of money that we would have collected for that. And so the board will need to figure out, because it's allocated for a specific project, of how we'll make up that difference. We've got enough money in the asset improvement fee that if it becomes an issue, that we can get it out of there. And obviously there'll be no increase to any of the residents. Okay. The next thing on the agenda is the Building Grounds and Maintenance Committee. Michael Perry is the chairperson. First thing has to do with committee appointments. So Steve, can I ask you to make a motion?
Make a motion to approve Mike Scott as a member of the BGM committee for a 2-year appointment.
I'll second.
So we have a motion and a second to approve Mike Scott to a 2-year term for the Building Grounds and Maintenance. Any questions, comments from the board? Or Mike Perry, would you like to tell us about Mike Scott?
Mike Scott has probably been a resident here for I can talk loud enough. Mike Scott is actually my neighbor, and he's been a resident here of the resort for about 5 years now. He and his wife both have retired from NASA. I think he had 30 years with NASA as a mechanical engineer with them. So this guy's a rocket man, okay? And before that, he spent 3 years on the Panama Canal running maintenance and maintenance procedures down there on the canal before it was given back to the country of Panama. He's a great asset. His experience is very vast, and he's a very creative gentleman. I think we're going to have a really good member of the BGM committee, and we won't have to go out looking for engineering services with him on our committee.
Any questions from any member of the board?
Sounds like a good member,
Yeah,
Mike.
it does. Any questions from the residents? Yes, come up to the microphone, please. State your name and lot number.
Donna Wisdom, 379. I just want to know, is he a full-time or is he seasonal? Okay.
I think we need a full-time too. Most of our committees, DRC is the only one that meets throughout the year. But since COVID, we've really been doing a great job on the virtual meetings. So most of the work is actually done during the season, but these people are available for any meeting that might occur throughout the entire year. Any other questions for any residents? See nothing from the chat. Call for the motion. The question is to approve Mike Scott as a member of the Building Grounds and Maintenance Committee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Excellent. Thank you. Next on the agenda is regarding the paving project for this summer. Can I get a motion?
I make a motion to approve YSC paving to mill and repave streets in section 9 and North Tumbleweed. This includes the seal coating also in sections 1 and 7 Happy Trails Boulevard, and Roy Rogers, not to exceed $725,000. This is reserve items number 208 and 212.
I second.
So I see in our board packet, we have a lot of information about YSC paving. We've not used this company before. You have submitted 3 bids for it from 3 different companies. 2 of them that we have used before, and you've broken it down for us from section 9, this resurfacing of tumbleweed, the seal coating of sections 1 and 7, and the seal coating of Happy Trails Boulevard and Roy Rogers. And you've given us a grid for each of those. What I noticed is that Sunland, the total bid was for $800,136. El Keely was $661,660, and YSC was $652,859 as their generic bid. So it's not the cheapest, but it's on the low end. So tell us your process for reviewing these, and then I also noticed that you have a letter of recommendation in our packet.
Yes, this is, of course, this is something we've been doing pretty routinely for the last several years. We've had several different companies come in and do some work for us, and some of them have done us a phenomenal job, and others are adequate, not exactly what I would thought we would have gotten. And so this particular company, I did some research with them. They do work for one of the resorts up in Cave Creek. They do, the lady that I talked to up there has the same position that I do, and she said that they would never use anyone else but YSC. They have 30 miles of interior roads inside of their facility, a 3,000 home complex. Great reviews. So they're some of the best paving they've ever had done. And they've used the same people that we've used in the past. 2 different recommendations have been very, very strong in the favor of these folks. When we went through the walkthrough process, one of the contractors never even came out. They gave us a bid, never came out and walked through the process, walked through the resort with me. The other one, we spent a considerable amount of time with the other 2. And I just feel like that we're going to get a good product here. These guys have been in business for 25 years. They do road, I mean, they do big roads. I mean, like highways as well as these smaller resorts and whatnot. I just believe we're going to get a good product from these folks after the research that we've done on them. They're just what I tell you, just a few $1,000s more than the other company that which was El Keely.
But they're less than Sunland.
Yeah.
Yeah. Any questions, comments from the board members?
Yeah, Mike, I noticed that the YSC bid was for $652,859, but yet we're doing a not to exceed for $725,000. And that's a plus of $72,141. I realize you're planning for some unforeseen event, but is 72,000 a magic number? Just help me understand, why would we not go with 50 as opposed to going with 72,000?
Well, in the past, we've not really ever used all the contingency. We have used some of it. Historically, we kind of base that on a percentage of the total. Obviously, we have a project management fee is 2% of the gross of the bid itself. And then there's a third-party inspection fee that's done by an independent inspector who comes out and takes compression tests of the asphalt and has lab tests of the composition of the asphalt to ensure that we're getting the product that we're paying for. It has not been done in the past, and I think we've been negligent by not doing that. So we're going to make sure that we have good testing, we get a good product, and then we put a $50,000 contingency in there.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So project management is 2%. Then what's the inspection fee?
It's 8.
It's 8% or 8,000?
No, $8,000.
Thank you. Okay.
Yeah, not to exceed $8,000.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions from the board member?
Thanks,
Marilyn?
Mike. We needed that follow-up. We need those references. We need some of this follow-up. So I appreciate your efforts in getting that.
Thank you.
And I would just concur that every every year we're learning, good and bad, about the projects and also the vendors that we've used and what the right questions to be asking. And so we're all getting a little better educated on it and be able to make a better decision. Ron, did you have a comment?
I'd just like to compliment you on the fine job that you did in summarizing this. Do you have a project manager in mind for this year?
I do, but it needs to be presented to the board in an executive session prior to bringing it to the general populace.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions from the board? Seeing none, I see if there's anything from the residents here, please come forward. While they're coming forward, I'm looking at the chat and it asked for, would the paving of section 9 include all of Buckthorn Street? Part of Buckthorn is in section 4, they believe, and then Little Whitethorn Street?
Actually, what it is all of Tumbleweed that runs from the gate, the
Walgreens
east gate,
Street.
all the way up Tumbleweed and across Desert Fern to where it ties into Pat Brady. That's where it goes, that whole strip. Okay.
What about Buckthorn? Buckthorn. All the way, Buckthorn doesn't go to Roy Rogers, does it?
Yes, yes, it goes all the way through and ties back in to Tumbleweed.
Tumbleweed, not
Yeah.
Roy Rogers. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Molly,
No, it
hopefully
ties
that
into
answers your
Dale-
question.
It ties into Dale Evans.
Ties to Dale
Yeah.
Evans, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Glenn, clock's ticking.
Okay, Glenn Brower, lot 2353. Steve, you made the motion? Yes, you did. Okay, I'm looking at the reserve fund. And as my study of the reserve fund in the last couple of months, there's a dollar amounts available, but then I find out it's not available. So what I'm looking at, if you would, Mike might know, but you quoted 3 different items here. And I'm looking at the reserve fund, which has a lot of money in this figures, but is that money still there? Is the money going to be covered, or do we have to have another assessment, or are you going to use monies from the asset fund?
Glenn, the dollars are there as an aggregate. For an individual item, the amount that is allocated per the associated reserve study might be higher and lower than what we need. But the total dollar amount is available in the reserves.
That's all I want to know.
The
Thank you.
item might be this individual line item.
Yeah.
Wishy-washy,
If
but
we got the money, great. I just don't
We
want
got
to
the
see
money.
another assessment. Thank you.
Marilyn? Marilyn's faster than you, okay?
Marilyn Klein, Lot 392. When are we going, while we've got all these people in here doing the redoing what we got bad judge last year, why can't we have somebody with patching material and stuff with all the cracks that are out there in the parking lot, and they're getting wider all the time. There's been a hole outside the dog park for 2 or 3 years that nobody's even put any patch in it, and the patch usually comes out anyway. And I would like to see that finished. Besides, when the paving people park in there, they've ruined part of the parking lot. They didn't fix it. So I would like to see part of that included in this bill.
Okay. Michael Perry, could you respond to that?
Well, the project out here about sealing the cracks is a completely different project than the ones we have presented before the board. That'll have to come into a separate quote outside of this, and it's not really included in this part of the bid.
Thank you.
Which hole? I have not seen that.
What we can do is we'll ask Jill to look into that because maintenance does have some product out there that they can use to see whether that would be the appropriate product. And maybe they'll work with you, Mike, with your
Well, and it
expertise.
would probably be something we'd include in, I mean, we're going to put together a crack sealing program, but the time to do crack sealing is in the winter time when the cracks are open, not in the summertime when the thing swells up. You couldn't slip a piece of paper in them in the summertime because it grows together. So there's some inconvenience about sealing cracks in the wintertime when we're all here. We're trying to work out a way to do that. And, but again, that is outside of this particular project that we have on presented to the board.
Okay, thank you. Okay,
I'm just curious, you have a $50,000 contingency fee, I think I heard you say, on this contract. With the way gas prices and oil prices are behaving, do you know that for sure that your contractor will adhere to the quote that he gave you, or is there freedom for him to increase his bid?
The bid we have from YSC is a fixed number through the summer. They're large enough that they can absorb that cost. There's nothing in the contract that says that they can change the price of the material based on oil prices. That's not included in the contract. There's no adjustment that can be made there. The fee that they've charged, or the quote that they gave us, is good through the summer.
okay, all right, thank you. Another little comment on, from the chat, again, this gets back to Buckthorn. The section that Molly is wondering about is that Whitethorn, that's the little street called Lover's Lane, and it attaches to Buckthorn. Is that included in this repaving? Yes, it is. Thank you.
All of section 9.
Okay.
Okay. And then just the north end of Tumbleweed and Desert Fern where it ties into Pat Brady.
Okay.
Okay.
Another
Mike,
thing,
go ahead.
excuse me, Mike, I did notice on the first page of that contract that you inserted in our packets that it says material prices are good until June 30th. If we receive this estimate contract back signed by March 7th, which was Monday, I believe. So is there a chance that's going to impact the changes?
I don't think so. I gave them some grace period when we bid this thing. They missed the bid date. And I gave them a grace period and told them that we would work with the dates on getting this thing assigned. We missed the February meeting because we couldn't get it all put together. And I don't have any qualms about asking them about it, but I don't think they're going to change this bid. They're really anxious to come in and do some work for us.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not going to let them change the bid. We'll just do something different.
All right. Seeing no further questions, we'll call for a vote. Given that it's a dollar amount, I would like a roll call vote, please.
Roberta Ernest,
Yes.
Marilyn Sorensen,
Yes.
Steve Deal,
Yes.
Marie Besham,
Yes.
Becca Paulson,
Yes.
Ron Woodward,
Yes.
Barbara Fugelberg.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you. And again, Michael, we really do appreciate the diligence you've done on this and the way that the board is getting better educated every year on evaluating these contracts to make sure they get at what we need to do, and certainly appreciate the letter of reference that was included in it. Okay, next thing on the agenda has to do with the Communications Committee for committee appointments. Marie, would you like to make a motion, please?
I would. I'd like to move that we approve Judy Craker, Betty Kaufman, and Rachel Miller as members of the Communications Committee for a 2-year appointment.
Second.
So we have Pat McCormick here, who's the chairperson of the Communications Committee. Pat, is there anything you'd like to add regarding Judy and Betty and Rochelle?
No, I think these ladies are all bringing a lot of talents to the committee, things that we can really use. Judy is a retired teacher, focused a lot in the journalism area, so we're looking forward to her short and concise blasts. Betty was a national sales manager, dealt with customer service, is used to dealing with people. She is a full-time resident. You may see her, she works part-time at the golf course. And Rochelle Miller is also here full-time. She is a retired teacher, but Rochelle has a degree in computer science as does her husband, and she comes as a set of two, she says. So the husband is already offering his services, and Rochelle has already started doing some work with Renee. So we're hoping that that will help relieve some of that work that Renee's been doing. And maybe she can retire one of these days.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from any member of the board?
I had the privilege of meeting these candidates, and I was very impressed with all three of them. They are going to be a wonderful asset, I think, to the Communications Committee.
Comments, questions from the residents? Seeing none. I see nothing on the chat. So the motion is to approve Judy Cracker, Betty Kaufman, and Rochelle Miller to a 2-year term to the Communications Committee. All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? Motion passes. Thank you. Next is the DRC Committee. Marilyn, would you like to speak to the palm tree trimming program?
This is probably something that is difficult to understand by the residents because we've had this amenity since the park's inception, I believe. But the palm trimming, the palm trees are on private property, and the process has become very difficult to, untenable is the word I used, in terms of coordinating it between vendors and owners. And it's also difficult in terms of liability for the association, because when there's a damage, then we have brought a vendor in, so therefore it's assumed we will take care of the damages. And we want to get away from that if we can. Over the years, DRC has worked to find vendors willing to come into the park and trim trees on our private property, as well as the trees in common areas. The benefit being trees would be trimmed in the summer, which is best for these trees, and the process was overseen somewhat by the association. These trees do need to be trimmed in the summer, so it is something that has to be arranged for while many of our owners are gone. This has become an unwieldy process, as explained in our last week's town meeting. We had a rather extensive discussion on this at the town meeting, which we invite all of our residents to come to, so we can talk without limits on these types of topics. And so we did have some very good discussion this last week. So therefore, going forward with the tree trimming arrangements, it will become dependent on the owner of the property to take care of the tree trimming. Our trees are both aesthetically pleasing, and they do add potential value to each of our properties. DRC will be sending out a vendors list with contact information in an email blast. We will follow up with letters to the property owners. We are looking at other means to assist you in making these arrangements. We hope to have at some point in time a way for you to be able to get online and take care of this issue. But right now it's not available, and we will keep you updated as to our progress in this effort. We are working on it. We want to do as much as we can in the way of assisting you in resolving this issue. So at this point, are we going to have, do you want me to make a motion at this point?
I don't think we need a motion on it. Maybe next at the April meeting. You'll
Okay.
have to finalize the plans then, right?
All right.
Yeah. Just as a comment, it was very beneficial to have the conversation at the town meeting. And it was very obvious that the palm trees are very important to the residents, and that many residents were unaware that it was their responsibility if it's on your private property to do it. And secondly, the time frame of which it needed to occur for it to be effective. So that's an issue that we need to look at. And secondly, as Marilyn mentioned, of really trying to figure out how we can do it so there's an easy process for everybody to follow. So we still have some time. Marilyn's going to be working on through the night, Monday through Sunday, trying to get this resolved. So we'll have more both at the next town meeting and our April board meeting. So next, go ahead.
I'm concerned that we make sure as we go through this process that residents are involved and that we don't make a decision in April that makes them find tree trimmers for June. That won't cut it with residents. won't cut it with me, and I don't have a palm tree. But we have to give them ample opportunity. We have to make sure that there's a vendors list, and we need to go forward from that point. But I just need an insurance that we're not going to bring this back in April and jump on it and hammer.
One of the things that we're going to look into the feasibility of how we can use, this may not be feasible, but right now, Lily Woods from the Mail Center has set up a really nice process for us to be able to forward our mail or redirect our mail and actually pay for that process online, a very simple process. And looking at maybe we might be able to do the same way in the scheduling of this, so you can do it from anywhere. But you're right, it has to be something that's really clear before people start heading home. Ron, did you have a comment?
This particular program suggestion has given me more heartburn than anything that I've looked at recently. And the reason is because I believe that the cart got in front of the horse on this thing. And just because it's too difficult or nearly impossible or whatever words are used for the resort to do, for the DRC to figure it out, is no reason in my mind to throw the problem onto the owners and to make the decision about what we're going to do after owners have left is going to even make it more onerous on those owners. So we've got to communicate, we've got to come up with a program and work with the owners to find the people who will do this job. And if it means that we have to look for a coordinator, I think that may be the course of action that I would go, but it's the problem is really exacerbated by the fact that it's got to be done in June and July. Most of the owners have already left here by that point, and they won't know whether this vendor shows up or not. They won't know whether the vendor has done a satisfactory job or not, or whether damage has been done to their property. So if we had somebody, and I would suggest bringing in some of these companies to talk to them and see whether they're going to be able to do it, because just because we have a list from the DRC saying that these companies exist, and I have one right here that says they'll do it for $45 and they'll cut the tree down for $275. And they've been on the resort and they've done good work where they have worked before. But the problem that I have is that we've got to work this program out and let people know what's going on, especially if we think we're going to begin finding them on the 1st of August for something that they haven't even seen yet. If damages are done to their property, they need to know about it so that they can start a recourse with the company that did the damages before waiting until October or November and they return and find out that a limb went through their roof or something like that during the pruning process. This is a difficult thing to figure out. And because it's too hard to do doesn't mean that we need to send it out to another 150 or 200 owners and tell them figure it out for yourself. We have to work with them, and I'm really glad we're not going to vote on this. I hope we're not going to vote on this until we've figured out a better course of action than what's been proposed. I'd hate to see us have the owners cut down all of the palm trees simply because we couldn't figure out how to coordinate pruning them.
Good point. Thank you. Any other questions, comments from the board? Residents?
Sorry. Donna Wisdom, 379. Palm trees. I hate them. Sorry, guys, I really do. But I am a retired landscaper. Okay, I owned a landscaping company. I would be glad to help out coordinating something to get these trees trimmed the proper way. Because if they are trimmed the proper way and skinned, not just the leaves pulled down, but skinned, we would get rid of 90% of the pigeons. We would get rid of possibly all of the rats. And we wouldn't have a scorpion problem too. And those are the things, those are the three creatures that live in those palm trees. So if we could do something to make sure, if it means that I will help coordinate, I mean, because I'm here year round, I would be glad to help whoever it is that needs whatever to be able to say, you're supposed to be here getting this tree trimmed and I want it skinned. Now,
Great.
skinning costs a little bit more money, but still, if we can do that, we can get rid of half of the other problems we are having here. Just
Thank
saying.
you. Thank you.
Haven't been involved in DRC for a number of years. I've seen the problems that happen when they want to do the palm tree trimming. The resident hasn't responded. They try to get a hold of the resident. The resident hasn't turned in a departure form with the correct information, phone number, or address. So somebody has gonna have to make certain that all of the departure forms are done and all of the phone numbers are done. Because I know DRC spends hundreds of hours on this every year trying to get them done. And unless we got somebody, which I'm glad to hear we got somebody, that can help out on this.
Thank you, Michael. Okay. Seeing no other comments, appreciate all those comments and Ms. Wisdom, you're on. Let's move to the next item. This won't be controversial. So, Marilyn? You're getting there.
Are we going to make a motion on this one?
No, we don't need a motion on it because we don't have a specific action item.
Are we skipping the guideline issue then?
No. No, we need a motion to approve the changes to the design guidelines.
Oh, okay. That's what I was questioning. I make a motion to approve the changes to the design guidelines.
I'll second that. Okay, now we have a motion on the table to approve the design guidelines. They were discussed at the town meeting and the comments were heard from the residents at the town meeting and they were taken to the DRC committee. So Marilyn, as liaison to the DRC committee, would you like to talk to us about what went on in the DRC committee and what's being presented here?
I'd like to say this, that we did start out in the committee and then we took this to the town meeting and then we met in the committee again because we wanted to respond to the comments that we've been given. I want to read this so I stay on track, but I put this together this morning. As a community, we are in the process of updating our DRC guidelines to more accurately reflect the needs of our community. The current changes have been reviewed through the committee and with residents during the last town meeting. We have tried to get as much input on these as we could. These changes are primarily based in support of previous concerns that have been voiced by our residents. We also understand that updating these guidelines is an ongoing process, and we acknowledge that the changes identified to date may not reflect all of our residents' concerns. In other words, we have right up to the last minute, we were taking input on changes. And so at some point we had to say, okay, let's take what we have and let's move forward with this because there's going to be ongoing concerns. This is just the way this animal is. I mean, it's just, it's like a living document. Things change from time to time. Some things just become outdated, become inefficient. And so those things will be brought to us, we hope, by you as you see them and you understand what's going on. And we catalog those concerns and we look for consensus in those concerns. And then we meet and we begin making the adaptions that are necessary. Thank you.
So the board has in front of them a summary of the guideline changes. I'll just briefly mention it for the residents. Under shade privacy panels to add language to include solid stucco and sidewalls to match existing structures. Under the flagpole section to raise the maximum height to 25 feet. The maximum height in the villas will be 15 feet. Under air conditioning units, a new product that many people are using is called the mini split. They're adding language related to that called add the mini split air conditioning units to determine they may be installed on the rear or the interior side of the property. Under the awning height, this is the RV awning height, to raise the existing awning height to 15.6. Under the height of the storage structure, change the shed height to meeting the awning height of 15.6. Under the fifth wheel skirting and language to support solid frame skirting material to match existing structures on lot. Under regarding driveway and concrete, this is in section 7, to remove language that requires all parking areas to be concrete. And concrete in the villas, the section to define location pavers and concrete is permitted within the villas. So questions and comments from members of the board?
Yes. So I believe that the design guidelines need to be updated and changed. I have a concern, and I shared it with Mike, I shared it with Marilyn, and I talked with Ron about it. My concern is the height on the awnings, and this is something that precedes before I came on the board. I feel that the awning height should be the max height that we allow a structure on the property. So if the structure on the property is 17 feet, I believe that's correct, Mike? Yes, I'm seeing a head nod?
Yeah.
Okay, then the awning should be allowed to be at 17 feet. This allows for the larger fifth wheels and larger Class A's that are typically at 13.5, 13.6. I don't expect them to get any larger than that they can back in without any problems with elevation on the drive. That allows clearance, which allows for better circulation and a better running of air conditioners and that for your RV. It also allows people that need to do some type of roof maintenance periodically can do that without having to pull their RV out into the road or into a parking lot. My concern being that if we don't make that change now, instead of stepping through incrementally, if we don't do that now, my question then comes, as I asked Mike, we do have some structures in the back on Cotton, maybe some other locations, maybe even in the ranch, that are at 17 feet, and the awning is at 17 feet. So if you're going to pass this at 15.6, then are you going to those owners and telling them they need to drop their awnings to 15.6? So my recommendation is that I'm happy to sign and agree to this if we amend it that we will change the awning height to 17 feet, and that brings everyone in the resort into compliance.
So
that's one. I do have another one, but you go ahead and address that one first.
Okay, so Marilyn, would you speak to the conversation that occurred at the committee level?
We looked at that, but because there are some awnings, some buildings that only are 14.6, we felt aesthetically a 17-foot awning would become aesthetically unappreciated. So we do have variances in our buildings. Some can be that high. We also have to have, if it's over a shed, the shed has to be raised to reach underneath the awning. And that again requires some structural changes. It is not easy to lift a frame to 17 feet without engineering involvement, so that people who did change it would have to bring an engineer in to do that. You can't just go stick a piece on there and raise it up. So it becomes much more complex to change it, to change everything to 17.6. Now I know that she's not asking that we require it be changed, but I think the aesthetics would be pretty disturbing if we started having them pop up all over the park at that height at this time.
Okay,
Mike, is there anything I've missed?
And the awning, go ahead, Mike, I'm sorry.
No, I think that pretty much covers the feeling of from the committee level regarding the awning height.
And I think also the issue is this awning is for the RV port. And that for those that don't have RVs, that have snuggles or park models and all that, that are at 14.6, still is the intent that their awning for their carport be at 14.6 and not at 17 because of the discrepancy that would look like. So this issue, whether it's 15.6 or 17, has to do with the ability of that RV being getting in, having adequate circulation and enough room so we don't have too many falls off of
Right.
it.
And I think, because I actually drove around, and Marilyn, I understand your concern about aesthetics, but we do have units out there that I'll call it the Arizona shed. It's an Arizona room, but it's a shed. It's not a house. They are sitting there at about 14.6 is the max height at that time, with no awning over them, but there's an awning over the RV pad that's at 14.6. So I did not see that that was an aesthetic, unpleasing look, if you will. So I'm still going back that I think we need to bring it to 17. It brings everybody into compliance, because right now what you're doing then is you're grandfathering people in, and then somebody else comes in and says, I want to do mine at 17. And you're saying we can't do that because it's at 15.6. So I'm going to appeal to everybody that we look at the 17, and that's the height we should have the awnings at.
Ron, you've got a comment?
I agree with Roberta on the 17-foot limit. I have one that's 14.6 and my house is 14.6. They're not joined together. I don't think they look aesthetically bad. I asked a contractor about it, and he gave me a price, and he said, personally, I think it would look better if they weren't in contact with each other. But the idea of raising it to 15.6 when there is a limit of 17 foot, and you're not considering the slope angle that some of these things are at. We've got one across from us that's got a 2-foot rise over 10 feet. And it's got a gutter down the middle of the street. When you drop that front wheel into the gutter, the clearance is still going to be very, very tight to back that in there without taking the top of the air conditioner off. So I just don't see the point in coming back in a year and saying, well, we made a decision to go to 17 feet. Why don't we just say, let's take them on an individual basis? They're still going to have to look at them and see whether they will be disruptive in their aesthetic appeal. And the engineering cost, I mean, that goes with any one of them. If you're going to have to have plans put together and engineering considerations for the footings and the poles and everything else. I don't think I'm not going to go in there and raise mine a couple of feet without some engineering. First of all, I'm not going to raise mine. I don't think most of them out there are the will, but there are 17 footers in here. And as people drive around and look at them, they make their determination based on what they see. We're not responsible for the sins of our fathers, but we are responsible for following the rules that are presently in there. We make it a lot easier on ourselves if we just recognize that we should give some liberty on this thing and go to 17 foot and put this thing aside and stop arguing about it and expecting people to drop it if it's less than 17 foot. There's other things in here that bother me that they haven't addressed. And I've asked them over and over and over to define a habitable structure. We use the term habitable structure, habitable space, and it's not defined in there anywhere. And I've asked for it to be defined over and over again to give it some specificity with regard to what we're talking about, because I know of structures that have been approved for living in without an RV there that only have one door in the whole building. And as far as I'm concerned, that's a fire trap. I know ones that have been approved that have no escape windows in the upper floors. That's a fire trap. So let's define what a habitable structure is. With regard to storage structures, I'm not talking about just sheds, but we say storage structures are limited to 120 square feet. The national allowance on this, Maricopa County, and Surprise is 200 square feet. I've got a guy over there who wants to build a storage. I'm not talking about a Rubbermaid shed. I'm talking about a constructed storage building underneath his awning. He has no other pieces of building on that property except an awning, but he's limited to 120 square feet because they're calling it a shed rather than a storage building. And finally, one other thing that I've addressed or tried to address with the DRC very unsuccessfully is that the whole idea of this RV removal from the lots, and if you look at the form says that you must, well, the rules say, the DRC guidelines say you got to put it back to what it was when you came there. So if it had an RV there in that space, you have to have that space clear to put an RV in there. But they're skirting the whole ideas by allowing people to buy homes without RVs simply by putting in a request to remove an RV that they never owned. And that's skirting the rules. And they say, well, it has evolved to that. We're only talking about 2 years. Evolutions don't occur in 2 years.
Ron,
It was deceived to that. I'm sorry. I
Ron-
cannot
Ron,
vote for this
let-
under
let's-
that guideline.
let's stick to the items that are on the table right now.
I'm concerned that we have committees that do an awful lot of work for us, spend an awful lot of time trying to work through all of the pluses and minuses to come up with some guidelines. I don't think it's our position to do anything other than to return this to the committee with our comments and let them address it. We start addressing those things. That's all we'll do every meeting from now until the time hell freezes over, and I'm not interested in that.
I appreciate everything that folks have said, and I think looking at that we're 14.6, 15.6, 17, whatever. For those of you who have been in the resort almost since day one, you'll know that they were just all bare lots, and the most anyone could have would be a 120 square foot shed. Then those got a little bigger, and then they start getting toilets in there. They start getting washer and dryers in there, and they got everything but a cook surface in there. And it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And now all of a sudden we've got the absolutely gorgeous Arizona rooms. Then they were at 14.6, and then someone built a 15.6. I don't know the exact details on that, but someone inadvertently put one up 17, and then how the rule got changed to 17. So we know that our residents are very creative in stretching the rules and then us having to follow suit. I think all of us can recognize that those Arizona rooms are gorgeous and any one of us would love to live in them. But at some point in time, we do have to have some standards. And I appreciate that Steve said the committee has worked an awful lot on this. And if we can think of incremental change, let's at least consider that. Marie, did you have a comment?
No, I was trying to hear you.
It's the thyroid, sorry about that.
I do want to say this. There are variances given, and the whole purpose of a variance is that the rule applies, but in this situation, it doesn't work. Rules are not for the sake of rules. Rules are the sake of, so there's a purpose behind it. If I go to a stop sign, I can stop, and if there's nobody there, then I really haven't complied with what the rule is for. The rule is for safety. I do stop because that's what I'm supposed to do, but the purpose of the rule is safety. We have rules for different reasons, but there are always occasions when it doesn't fit. And we have never been as a community so set that we could not accept variances. We try not to do it in a frivolous way, but we do try to do it when it's necessary. And it's certainly, we have one coach that came in here and there was no way he could get under the roof. The roof is off. We just took the whole roof off. I mean, you have to be willing to make variances because things do come up, but you also have to have an underlying process in place. And so that's what we're trying to do. And the reasoning that we've used to put these policies in place is based on hours of discussion and ideas that have come from you and from the committee. And so what we're saying to you is, let's try this. Let's see if this works. I think it will work. There really is no reason it won't work. So it's kind of one of those situations. And I just wanted to clarify that we do variances when it's required.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I just want one last thing, Marilyn. I appreciate all the work they've done too, the committee, because I know this is not an easy job. You're not making everyone happy. My only concern is, as I stated, we are bringing up the awning to 15.6, and yet we have people that are in violation of that already. And we could actually bring everyone into compliance in the association at 17. Now, why the board before, or the DRC, chose not to penalize the people that violated the rule, whether it was the 15.6 or they went to 17 feet and they weren't allowed to, I don't know. It doesn't matter. It's in the past, but we're going forward and we have an opportunity with this document to bring all of those people into compliance. And I think that's the stated way to go.
All right, thank you. Questions, comments from the residents?
Donna Wisdom, 379. Man, I was just going to sit here quiet today. Yeah, but that didn't work. I agree with Roberta. I agree that it should be brought up to 17. The reason I agree to that is I had a friend who wanted to come into Happy Trails. Her tag along, I don't know what you guys call them because I live in a house, but the RV itself would not fit under a 15.6 and would not fit under a 14. It has to be 17. And if you have all these new RVs that are being built, and I actually gave Mike a book because I have a friend who works in RVs and with RVs and stuff. And most of them now are being built where they need a 17-foot clearance. If you're not going to give that, we are limiting Happy Trails to not being able to supply the people that want to come in here that have that size of an RV. So I don't see why we can't do it up to 17, make everybody in compliance. Well, I won't be in compliance because I don't need to raise mine, but you know what I'm saying? Let them, if it's 17, let 17 be the highest, period. But at least we can get some new blood. We can get some new people in here. And I mean, I would love to be able to call my friend and say, hey, guess what? We're going to be able to do that for you and get some new people in here. They want to, you know, I'm just saying.
Right. Thank you.
Barb, real fast, there was a question I had about sheds. And maybe Marilyn can answer this. And I brought this up to Mike as well. We currently have a rule in there about the Rubbermaid sheds. And I don't remember the dimensions, I'm sorry, but I know that you can have up to 4 of them. They're Rubbermaids, yeah. But I know that my husband and I went and looked at one at Lowe's and we wanted something that was just a little bit larger. And this is the funny part. I think the max height on the Rubbermaids, Mike, are 7 feet. Is that correct?
77 inches.
I'm sorry, what?
77 inch.
Okay. So the one we looked at actually came up to a point which took us at about 7.5. It took us over the max, right? My question is, have we not considered maybe only having a little bit larger Rubbermaid shed as opposed to having 4 individual ones? To me, that looked a little more messy on the lots.
Mike, go ahead, Mike.
That was proposed to our prior board of directors in 2020 when we revised the design guidelines.
You're breaking up.
I know this thing doesn't like to work.
So there has been some leniency in the Rubbermaid because, you know, they change their dimensions almost every year. And so where it might have been 17.7 inches and 4 inches one year, and now it's 5, but the overall total dimensions might be the same. So I don't think there's ever been any heartburn or fines because you got one that was 2 inches greater than the square footage allowed. Am I correct in that, Mike?
That is correct. We have discussed a larger size Rubbermaid. Like I was trying to say, our design guidelines were revised in 2020. That was brought to the board of directors at that point in time to allow a maximum size Rubbermaid shed to be not to exceed 80 square feet, is I believe what was submitted for at that point in time, a revision in our design guidelines. The reason B is a lot of our residents felt, why have 4 small Rubbermaid sheds when we could have one larger Rubbermaid shed we could put bicycles in or something along those lines. These Rubbermaid sheds are more of a Rubbermaid cabinet, with them being 77 inches tall in maximum height, 54 inches wide and 30 inches deep. You can't get a bicycle in it. You can get paint cans and things like that in those storage cabinets, but not a lot of large items. So that was the request that was brought forward. Ultimately, it was removed from the design guidelines in the revision of 2020.
And we did have it, prior to that, you were limited to 2 of those modules.
That is correct.
Now we've increased it to 4. So I think there's flexibility in there. What? Right. But we can revisit that. Mr. Rugland.
Mike Rugland, lot 1130. I thought we were talking about awning heights, but you know, if we're going to discuss each one of the items on the DRC guidelines, we'll be here all year. I think the state law on building RVs is at 13.6. I think most of the issue at Happy Trails comes in where there's a rise in the lot compared to the road. I know 13.6 is a little low for them, but 17 foot causes a lot more issues than anything else, because you can make a actual habitable living space out of a upstairs on the shed. And so I think in order to do something like that, you'd have to investigate the shed possibilities and all the other stuff we have there.
Have there been problems with the 17? There was a rumor going around that one of them took flight or collapsed because it wasn't engineered correctly. And I think that that's what I heard when I sat in on the committee, was that it isn't just a simple matter of making a 15.6, turn it into a 17. It has to be properly engineered and proper mounts into the thing. So, Mr. Hanson.
Yeah, Lauren Hanson, lot 556. Point of clarification, we're talking about raising the awning over the RV port area to
Correct.
15.6. How did the shed get into that? Because sheds aren't allowed on the RV port area. And
No.
if you're allowing the sheds to go up to 14.6, what about awnings over your patio area? I think
I
we're getting a
believe
little
that still
confused.
needs to match the highest point of the property. Am I correct in that, Mike?
Right, and how it's written in the design guidelines is how awning covering lot. So at this point in time, it's not specified just RV port side of the lot. It says awning covering lot and awning carport. Awning carport, I believe, is defined more in a manufactured home situation with the carport side on the left-hand side of a property, but awning covering lot may define a lot that has an RV port and an Arizona room. So it's not really defined at that point in time, at this point in time, to be just RV port side of the lot.
Okay, so if you put an awning over your patio, you can go up 15.6. If we go to 17 foot, you can go 17 foot over your patio. That seems a little high.
Well, then maybe that's the verbiage that needs to be tweaked, right? That if it's over your living area, it can't be any higher than the structure you have. But if it's over your RV, then it could be up to 17. And maybe that's the variable and that's the compromise piece.
If your living space, if your habitable structure can be 17 feet, then that should be allowed for the awning over the motorhome as well.
But if your current structure there is 15.6, what we're saying is not the RV side, the other side. So, see,
Park models cannot have a structure at this time that's that tall.
Right.
If you have a park model on your property, you may not have a 17-foot shed.
Right. Right. So someone said table it. That's what we're thinking of doing up here. State law limits RVs to 13.6. That has to do with overpasses, doesn't it? Yeah. Yeah. And as Mike said, and a number of people recognize who are RVers, it isn't necessarily the true height of the RV as much as the fact that getting it in and out of the port based on the slope of it impacts the height even more.
That's true, but also I just want to make sure that we're clear, because we've been under a carport that was 14.6 when we had the Newmar, and there was not very much room up there, and that ventilation just created those air
Yes.
conditioners that continue to cycle, which is then using more, of
Energy.
course, power, but it doesn't do any good. It's non-efficient is what I'm saying, and we couldn't do any preventative roof maintenance or anything on that unless we pulled the coach out.
So Marilyn, you and I whispered to each other, would you be willing to change your motion to request that this go back to the committee for review? The recommendation came to us from the committee, so we'd like for the committee to hear the comments from today and have the committee review it.
Shall I amend the motion then?
Amend
that
the
we will-
motion to table it till next
We're
month.
going to table this motion at this time until it goes back into committee, and we will bring it back after the committee has met. Thank
I'll
you.
second. All in favor? Aye, okay. Any opposed? Okay, thanks. Let's move on then. Okay.
Could I make a
Oh,
comment?
I'm sorry, Bill, I didn't see you. You're in gray, the chairs are gray.
That's my style, yes. Hey, this has been very, very interesting. A lot of issues, a lot of discussion. And I'm wondering what process are you going to use? I think you might have just answered that question. What process are you going to use to solve this, to bring it to resolution? It's very complex. That's my question.
Well, we'll take it back to the committee, and I sat in on the committee the other day, and the nice thing about the committee is that it is really reflective of the community, and that there are people that live pretty much in every type of residence here in the community, and there are at least 3 RVers on that committee. And so if you listen to them, they were in favor of it staying to 15.6. So we'll take it back to them, bringing the comments here from the board and the residents, and seeing if we can make some accommodations, some compromise, or in some change. Okay. All right, let's move on then to the election committee. Marilyn, you had something?
I was Marilyn Klein, 392. I only missed one meeting, informational, and it was the one that I was interested in, but I was prevented from that because of doctor's appointments. I didn't even know this was on. We have a new person that moved in, a fifth wheel with a back patio, drop down, right next to the Greenbelt. On what is that? Stallions or Colt Street, right by the Greenbelt that goes through to NC1. It looks to me like they've had to take the roof off from their awning. Talk about looks. That is hideous. When we put our park model in, we had a carport and we wanted to put an Arizona room on. At that time, the rule was you had to have a continuous roof line, no zigzags. We took our off, we had to put trusses up, which was more expensive because we wanted 8-foot ceilings in the extended edition with ceiling fans. We did that. That looks like a nice house now. But if you're going these snuggle wides that are up and then it goes up to 17 foot, that's not looking good either. But I understand the 17 foot only on the coach side, because I've seen some pretty steep driveways, and you can't revise the manufacturers of golf or coaches, so they have to have 17 foot. But as far as the rest of the lot goes, I don't think we start changing all the rules for that just because it's a shed.
Okay.
And I was never for the double deck 17 foot sheds that got put in illegally in the first place. And I think it's a good idea to have everybody comply, but it should have been done years ago and made them take down instead of just letting them go with the rules that they violated.
Thank
and
you,
I
Marilyn.
want to have more of that done to make sure that they're not violating the CCNRs by mistake or by purpose.
By intention, correct.
Thank you.
Thank you, Marilyn. Okay, next on the agenda is the election committee. We've got a committee appointment. Marie?
Yes, I move to approve Jim Blair and Vicki Griffiths to members of the election committee for a 2-year appointment.
I'll second that. Any comments, questions from the residents? So Jim and Vicki are current members. They've been members of the committee for a long time. And it's good to see that they're willing to apply for another 2-year term. Anything else from the board? Residents? Seeing none, all in favor of adding or continuing Jim Blair and Vicky Griffiths to a 2-year appointment to the election committee. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None. Okay, Patrol Safety Committee, we've got committee appointments and committee name change. Roberta?
I make a motion to approve the Patrol Safety Committee change their name to the Safety Committee.
Second.
So we have a motion and a second to change the request from them to change their name from Patrol Safety to Safety. Can you give us a little background on that, Roberta?
No, I cannot. I apologize. I was not at those meetings, newly on
Okay,
the
that's right.
board. Basically, I can tell you that there was concern about the fact being reviewed as patrol and safety, that they were being confused by the residents as being part of the patrol group that is part of our safety and security, our gate shack, if you will, and those that patrol around. So they wanted to kind of separate themselves from that.
And we've had conversations about, is safety really the right term for
I
it?
have
But
concerns about that as well, but I just, at this point, I don't have a viable solution for them for a name change. I was willing to do Century, but I don't think they'd go for that. So I will follow their lead on this,
Yeah,
and
more to
we'll
come.
go from there.
Thank you. Comments from the board? Okay, comments from the residents? Pretty simple. All in favor of the committee, Patrol Safety Committee changing their name to just the Safety Committee? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And then we have a committee appointment. Roberta? We need a motion to appoint Blair Derry to a 2-year term. I'll make that motion. You know, okay.
I don't have it in my packet.
Okay, I'll
sorry.
make a motion to appoint Blair Derry to a 2-year term to the Safety Committee.
Second.
Blair has been a member of that committee for a number of years, very active in it. I think he's a good addition. Any other questions, comments from the board? Residents? Seeing none, all in favor of Blair Derry continuing on in a 2-year term to the Safety Committee? All in favor, say aye. Okay, all right. Excellent. Next thing is related to the old business. Let me scoot forward here. There isn't anything on that. So I'll be having something in my comments here in a second when we get down to that. Okay. Sorry, I'm just scooting ahead on my computer here and I'm a little slow. I know. I need a faster computer. Okay, I'll make a motion to, this has to do with the CDC guidelines and the changes in the mask requirement or recommendation. I make a motion to adopt the CDC guidelines dated February 25th, 2022 related to wearing masks indoors. Given Maricopa County is in the medium zone, masks are no longer required or recommended in indoor settings. I get a second?
Second.
Little anxious, aren't they? No. So the COVID-19 community levels are our new tool that the CDC is using to help communities decide what preventive steps to take based on the latest data. Levels can be low, medium, or high and are determined at looking at hospital beds being used, hospital admissions, and the total number of COVID cases. The new guidelines do not preclude people from voluntarily continue to wear face masks, and many groups may continue to do so. And that's directly from the CDC guidelines. That when we first started looking at COVID a couple of years ago, last year, the board, or in the first year and the second, we came up with some guidelines in that they had business graphs that they looked at that were green, yellow, and red. And we've been in the red for a long time, but last year we did come up with a grid that at what point we would get down to a yellow and barely open up some of our amenities and what time get to green. We've been in the red for a long time, for a while, but it's not unlike how we were a year ago. The volume was significantly higher, but the spike was about the same. And what we also are benefit here is we've got a lot of people immunized. We never asked for you what your immunization status, and we never will. But just as an FYI, in Maricopa County, people over 65, 102% of the people over 65 are immunized. I don't know how that's happened other than they're a bunch of overachievers, but so we assume we're the same. So we're very confident that we can go along with the CDC guidelines. So any comments from the residents? All in favor? Motion passes. So we'll be taking down the signs that say they are recommended in our buildings. In the event that the numbers go back, yeah, Ron wants to do that. In the event that the numbers go back up, we may have to make some changes, but that'll only be based on the CDC guidelines. Okay, next on the agenda is regarding the replacement of the spa heater in the town center. Steve?
Make a motion to approve commercial pool repair to replace the town center indoor spa heater, cost not to exceed $4,500. This is reserve item 1224.
I'll second that. So what we see in our board packet at the indoor spa heater has failed. Calls are made to Commercial Pool Repair, Leslie's and Shasta Pool Repair for quotes. Commercial was the only one to respond. You've gone online and the association can purchase a heater for $3,700 plus tax and maintenance will install, which will take 2 men approximately 4 hours. I just skirted through here. So do we have a timeline as to when this can occur? Is the thing being built over in the Ukraine and we need to wait a while, or?
I believe they have one on the shelf.
They have one on the shelf.
Couple weeks.
So a couple weeks for it. Okay. Any other questions from the resident, excuse me, from the board on this proposal for a pool heater for the indoor spa? What, do we have a history? Do we know the history of this heater? It is old? Okay,
Yes, I believe it's 8 to 10 years old. on
10
this
years,
one.
it's at least 10 years old, so it's way past its useful life, and I see we've got some various options in here. Okay. Any other questions from the board on this? Good news is it's going to be done soon. Questions from residents?
Glenn Brower, lot number 2353. The line item for the space heater is set at $3,300 and the price was 37.
Mhm.
Is that correct?
37 plus tax.
Plus tax? Okay. Now, when something like that, of course, when you're asking the life of that, it's 0 life, it's 8 years.
The current one is zero life.
So when you have an overage in the account, where do you get the extra money from?
Again, we look at the reserve dollars available as a whole, because some of the items on the reserve are at, I forget the term, run to fail.
Okay,
This would have
thank
been
you.
one of those.
Thank you.
So we do have a number of items in the reserve that are deferred. Okay. Any other questions, comments from the residents? Seeing none. Again, a dollar amount asked for a roll call vote. The motion is to approve commercial pool repair to replace the town center indoor spa heater not to exceed $4,500. This is reserve item 1224. Roll call, please.
Becca Paulson,
Yes.
Marilyn Sorensen,
Yes.
Roberta Ernest,
Yes.
Marie Basham,
Yes.
Steve Deal,
Yes.
Ron Woodward,
Yes.
Barbara Fugelberg.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Good. And we're looking forward to that being done in a very timely manner. She says confidently. Okay. Next thing on the agenda is a motion regarding a recumbent stepper for the fitness center. So I'll make a motion to approve the commercial fitness superstore to purchase a Spirit Recumber stepper for the fitness center not to exceed $4,000. This is reserve item 917. So Steve, I'm sorry, I've jumped the gun. You should have made that motion. What do you know about this? Were you up there using it and broke it?
Excuse me, who seconded it? Who seconded the motion?
I know I haven't. I'd lay down and let that pass before I. Any questions, comments? This is an item, Jill, that is, maybe you can give us more information, that it's used very regularly, correct?
Yes, it is. It's used a lot for physical therapy and stuff, and it has reached its useful life. It would cost us just as much to repair as it would be to replace.
Okay, and it has a, okay, all right. So they found this during routine maintenance. So any questions, comments from any board members on it? Questions from the residents? Seeing none? Okay, I'll call for the motion. The motion is to approve the commercial fitness superstore to purchase a Spirit recumbent stepper for the fitness center not to exceed $4,000. It's reserve item 917. Again, dollar amount, roll call, please.
Roberta Ernest,
Yes.
Marilyn Sorensen,
Yes.
Steve Deal,
Yes.
Marie Besham,
Yes.
Becca Paulson,
Yes.
Ron Woodward,
Yes.
Barbara Fugelberg.
Yes.
Passes unanimously.
Excellent. Okay. And I think that's it on that. Okay, we have no variances listed. Board president announcements. Regarding the golf course committee, as this is a new committee as a result of the changes in the bylaws, and we'll be forming the committee, the formal committee, probably later this fall. But at this point in time, I'd like to, as my prerogative as board president, to announce that Lauren Hansen will be the chairperson of this committee. As you know, Lauren has been very active in the community for a long time. He served on the board a number of years, and he's currently our volunteer coordinator. Lauren has a really good rapport with Jason, who's owns the golf course. And so Lauren, this next summer, will be looking at all of the items that are listed under this committee, to be looking at those things that are shared between Happy Trails and the golf course, and coming up with recommendations for the formal committee this fall. Did I speak correctly to that, Lauren? Okay, all right. So we're happy that Lauren will do that. Well, Lauren's back there in the black hat, white shirt, black hat. Uh-huh. Yes, yes. Okay, so the other thing I wanted to remind people is that we're listening sessions are on the third Thursday of the month. We're really pleased with the turnout that we're having. You'll find them on the schedule on the calendar. I believe it's 10 o'clock in NC1 next Thursday and 1 p.m. in the Chuck Wagon next Thursday. It's your opportunity to put us on the spot and ask us some questions, and we found there's some really good feedback as a result of that. We're enjoying it, and we believe that residents who've attended are also. Wanted to give you an update on the Chuck Wagon. As you know, the Chuck Wagon's doing very well with Cindy and Becky doing the breakfast, and I think everyone is really appreciative of that. As you know, the board has not a commitment, but we're asking Coldwell Banker to see if they can find someone to do a long-term lease, because we do believe that in the long term, that's our best option, and certainly appreciate maybe continuing on with what Cindy and Becky are doing on the short term, but still investigating the long-term potential of a lease. Just as an FYI, we did get an intent to lease, letter of intent to lease from Chef Peter. And so we still as a board believe that our needs as Happy Trails, and that is the heart of the community where friendships are made, and we want to continue that. And we still believe that our focus on anyone, if we lease it, and I mean if we lease it to someone else, would be that Happy Trails would be the priority. And there are pros and cons to Chef Peter, and we want to make sure that it really is, if he is the person that we all decide should lease that long term, that it's the right decision. And so we are not going into this with any idea that it's a done deal and thinking that maybe it's something that we could potentially pass on. So one of the things that we have found is that Homeco does have a food service director who has come out and looked through our operations and has given us recommendations on some options that we could look at. And this is a gentleman who is a chef himself and has an awful lot of experience running his own restaurants and also running restaurants in 55 and over communities. And we believe that he has a lot of expertise that will help us determine things that we're doing now, and also determining from Chef Peter if Chef Peter is the right person, believing that he can really read this person and find out if Chef Peter's intent is really matches up with what we want here. Again, that this be the heart of the community where friendships are made, good food is provided at a good price. And so we'll be asking him to sit down with Chef Peter and the representative Caldwell Banker to really get at, to find out if this is someone that we should move forward with or not. So we just received the letter of intent last week, and we're reaching out to Chef Jerry right now for that. And the other thing that the board is asked is that we are asking that the office be open during lunch hours. So the hours of operation starting next week. Jill, am I correct in that?
On Monday?
Okay. On Monday, the office hours will be 8 to 3. Currently are 8 to 3, but they will no longer be closed for lunch at that time. Okay. 8 to 3.
No, the office hours are 7:30 to 3:30, and we will now have the
Okay.
window open the whole entire time.
The window opens 7 to 3:30. Okay, thank you. But the key is that they'll be open for lunch, not closed during lunch. So that's pretty much all we have. With that, I'll call for a motion. Joyce.
Joyce Freeman, lot 2358. I have a formal complaint letter which I would like to file against the golf course, and I was told to give it to Ron Woodward, and now it's Lauren Hanson. Who's the person who do I talk to or send my
Well,
letter to?
Lauren is going to be the chairperson of the committee. Ron is the liaison, the board liaison to the committee.
So who gets the complaint letter?
Give it to Ron.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Very good. Motion to adjourn. So we have one. Do we have a second? All in favor? Aye. Thank you very much. Do remind people there is a courtyard happy hour this afternoon.